Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome to this week's episode of Steelers Touch Down Under. I'm Matt Peverell and I'm joined by Mike. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome to this week's episode of Steelers Touch Down Under. I'm Matt Peverell and I'm joined by my co-host as always, Mark Davison. Mark, how you doing? And you got to be sweating. I'm sweating.
Bloody warm. It is so hot down here. It is unbelievable. And as we bring up Double HH to start the show, Double HH says, but it is warm in the Southern Hemisphere today. It is 9 a.m. and it feels like it is already 32 degrees, which is probably like your 90 or something like that. It is very, very warm. I was going to wear my jersey, my Shazier jersey, but it's just too hot. So I've got my Iron City on, which is another one of favorite of mine. The weather's heating up down here for sure. You know?
It's crazy. 88. It's 88 where I am right now, Mark, and I think it's going to get up to 86, sorry, and it's going up to about 92 this afternoon. So it's incredible. Well, that's obviously, Fahrenheit. So for Celsius, I think it's going to get up to 32, 33 C for me down this afternoon. So podcast over, family barbecue, beach. That's what it's looking like.
That's the thing. The thing right now is it's warm, but it's like 9 a.m. It's not even the middle of the day yet. So, and it's for me living. We're both from the coast, really. We normally get the sea change in the afternoon, and it doesn't look like that might happen just yet because it's so hot. But this is what we got to deal with, guys. Like I said in the live chat, I was in there yesterday. I wanted to find out what the weather was around the USA and stuff like that. And I heard a lot of snow comments and things. I just wanted to, slam my head into the pile of snow. I love that kind of stuff, the fresh air and stuff over there. So it's awesome.
Yeah, totally. And it brings you back to all those memories of when you and I have both been over there and the difference in the temperature and that crisp air and what have you. But even for me, I've spent summertime over in the US before as well. Particularly I went through Texas in the summertime and, that was pretty awesome. So it's actually felt a lot like that summer the last couple of days. It's good to see some people in the live chat there. Big Bro Sco. He reckons it's about 23 Fahrenheit where he is. That's cold. That's
really crazy.
Mark, you're wearing an Iron City beer shirt today, I think. Am I right?
Yeah, I didn't mind it. I didn't mind the Iron City. Right. Yeah. Look, here's the big thing about Foster's. We don't have Foster's in Australia. It hasn't been there for years or yonks, right? The only time I have seen a Foster's beer was in Pittsburgh, in Mount Washington. There was another bar on the little community or town up there. My mate Ryan took me for a drive. We went into one of the bottle shops. I walked past one of those, I don't know what you call them, a tall boy, and it was a Foster's can. I was like, what is that doing here? That's the only time I've ever seen a Foster's. We don't drink Foster's. I've never seen one in Australia ever.
Do you know what though? I heard the other day that the Foster's International, the holding company of Foster's, are really keen on actually bringing Foster's back to Australia. I don't know how that's going to go. We've got so many different types of beers, but apparently they want to bring it back, believe it or not.
Fair enough.
We've got a few regulars in the live chat. Good to see Gyro, Steeler Chick, Felicia, Rhino, Tool, Ty, Just Me. I think we said Steeler Chick, Snowman, Double HH. So definitely some of the regulars in. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to Steelers Touching Under. I think, Mark, this is our third live show now. Live YouTube. So it's awesome to be with you guys. But look, let's crack into today's show. As you see by the title, 2 weeks left, too many Steeler questions. So we know there's 2 weeks left in the season. We've got AFC and NFC championship weeks this week. Then we've got obviously a week off. Then there's the Super Bowl, but 2 weeks in the proper season left there. Obviously, Pro Bowl's not happening. It's going to be a live Madden event. That'll be a flop. We don't need to go into that just yet. But no matter all of that, there's also heaps of Steelers questions. So, look, that's really what we're going to focus in today's show. Talk a little bit about all of those. Obviously, there's big news coming out this week as well. But yeah, I'm really keen to crack into it, Mark. But before I kick into it, Mark, reaction to Vance McDonald, the Vanimal. That's the latest breaking news over Dwayne Haskins. When you saw that come out, were you surprised?
Yeah, a little bit. He's a big piece to the Steeler offense. He's only been in the league 8 years. He was with the Steelers, I think, for about 3 or 4. We didn't use him at all last year, and there's probably a certain reason for that. We didn't use McDonald. I thought he was a good player coming in. He was a good blocker. You didn't hear much, nothing wrong with the bloke really. We all know that big play against the Bucks with the stiff arm heard around the world, or the don't argue heard around the world. This is just another point. Well, if he wants to go and he's got other stuff to do, then then it's time for him to go. It's not like a big issue. I think like the whole team is not based around one player. If it ever is, then you've got a really big problem. So we can, find people through the draft. I don't remember who the blokes were, but there were two guys they actually put on the practice squad, two tight ends. So, it's always good to see young blokes come up and start playing in the position as well and start learning new names. So but he was definitely like I wouldn't say he was a Hall of Fame kind of player or career stealer, but he had a steel heart, and he played really well in certain spots. And just for some reason, like maybe you can expand on this. Like I don't know why we didn't use him last year.
Yeah, totally, Mark. I mean, I think you hit on the head there. He's not going to be a Hall of Fame player. He's not going to make some of those top time steal lists. But at the same time, as you said, he showed that stealer's heart, and I think there'll be a really strong fan affinity for Vance. And it's awesome. And look, in reality, he came into the league as a lot more of a pass catching, vertical threat style tight end. We've seen him over the last couple of years more do blocking, and particularly this year when he was in. And he was also injured for a bit and out as well with illness. I think he'd make that COVID list off the top of my head. But we saw him move into that blocking piece. Obviously, Ben felt really comfortable throwing to him. He finishes his career with 181 receptions, just over 2,000 yards, 15 touchdowns. So that's not Hall of Fame stuff. But as you said, he embodies that spirit of what it is to be a Steeler and to play hard and to do what's asked of you when it's needed. As you guys said too, it's as you said there around. There's a couple of tight ends there in Gentry and Kevin Rader that are on the Steelers. Sort of those practice squads, fringe sort of players. But this is actually a very interesting draft, and I don't want to go into it too much today. It's one we can talk about a little bit later on as we get close to the draft. But there's a lot of prospects this year in the tight end. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of value, sort of 4th, 5th, and 6th round there, and we'll crack into those guys. So it'll be interesting to see. And obviously we've got to wait to see who declares as well, because there's some prospects that I've seen there, but if they don't declare, well, there's no point us harping on about them getting into the draft. So we'll wait a little bit closer, because otherwise it's just complete speculation at this point in time. But I think for the Steelers, getting younger at that position is really important. And due to just a bit of a scheduling issue, we weren't able to get it out on Wednesday, Thursday. But if anyone goes and listens to a new show that I'm doing each week now that'll go on a Wednesday, which is called Cap Room, I did talk about Mark's got the cap there. So funnily enough, I talked about it, and I actually pre-recorded that before the Scobros went on. But both shows covered the expense that's going into the Steelers tight end, for 2021, that tight end room. In fact, the Steelers were going to be the highest team in the league for tight end spend at over 18 million. So Vance's cap saving there, taking out 5.2 million, allows us to get younger at the position, allows us to bring in, tight ends are cheap, particularly a blocking tight end that the Steelers want. It's a lot cheaper. So we can get something at 2 or 3 million. Like, hey, there's suddenly 2 million we can put somewhere else, which in this off season with we're reducing cap number on what we've had this season, whatever that will be. Vance has done the Steelers a bit of a solid. Let's just put it that way. He's done us a favor.
Like a mutual agreement, Like I think Vance has had his time up, and 8 years is still like I looked at him. 8 years is still a pretty good career. Like let alone the NFL guys have sometimes minimum 3 years for their, and that's what they get. They say it's you and you're out kind of thing. So Vance did 8, but there's one funny thing though. I looked up the guy who he palmed or don't argued.
Conte. Was it Conte? Chris Conte?
Yeah. If you Google Chris Conte, Vance McDonald comes up. Like 100%. If you Google Chris Conte, there's like 4 articles on how Vance McDonald did that stiff arm for 75 yards. So that's gonna, and he even did an interview the other day, and that's gonna be part of his legacy. And like Steelers will forever remember him as that. Like, that was an unbelievable play. And at the time too, I think we lost 2 games. It was 2017, and we were versus the Bucks, and they had 1-2. We were 1-1, and we needed a bit of spark for that offense to get going, and he definitely provided that spark. And like, there's nothing better than seeing like that kind of play.
Mark, I was in a meeting. That game, and I was just sort of wrapping up, and I looked over at my phone, and I had a notification from everything. It was like Steelers, NFL.com, ESPN, Kaya, which is like the broadcasting cable network service here. Like it was like 12 different notifications of people like Steelers player, like, monsters or destroys, or like, puts this guy into the dirt. It was absolutely hilarious.
Oh.
It was great. But I wanted to bring up, before we lose in the live chat there from HH, our assignment this offseason is to send a talented young player with great speed and hands to the Steelers rookie camp as an international development player. Funny you say that. Mark and I, the team that we support, which we've talked about a little bit, the Manly Seagulls, they have a player whose last name is Schuster, and he's an up-and-coming, he's a really good player, and he's sort of like quite a bit bigger than Kyler Murray in terms of height, but he's that sort of style player in terms of he plays the ball. I don't know how good he'd be throwing it forward, but he's very much a playmaker with the ball, but he can run all over the field. He's very, very strong pound for pound. So let's hope the Steelers can keep Juju Smith-Schuster, and then we don't have to send the Schuster from the Manly Ringer Seagulls over.
He's a fullback, isn't he? The Schuster?
Yeah, he plays fullback, 5'8", and he can play in the lock position, which is a bit like a tight end or running back style position.
With that rugby league, there's quite a few guys like who could be receivers, like on the wing. Like, those kind of players could definitely be trained up to be receivers. It's a hard transition. It's a very, very hard transition, though. I think, like, with the American football, what I've seen, and I've never played it, but I've been to some training things like for flag football and stuff. You've really got to go from when you're like a little tucker till you go into high school, college, and then the NFL. The big thing, I think, like, we have a few Australian players over there with the punters, and we have Jordan Mailata, who's with the Eagles, and those guys have been outstanding or have done certain things. But it's a huge transition just to learn all the playbook, and it's such a different game. Like, you're only, like, with the NFL, everyone knows it here. You only play 37 minutes like of real time, so it's a very different game. I think some players from the NRL will just go over for money or for the fame, and like, there was a few players I think who had done that in our game. E.g. Jared Hayne, I believe he did that with the San Fran 1 year, and there was so much hype about him, but I think if you really want to put your mind into it, you can do it. But some people just do it for the year break, and then they know they have a contract coming back to the NRL, which I don't really think is a very good thing for both leagues. But that's just my opinion. Yeah,
I think they've got to go. You hit the nail on the head there, Mark. You've got to go over a lot earlier, particularly in a lot of the positions when we're like the offensive line. You've got to be over there when you're 20, And he went pretty early, Mailata. I think he went over when he was about 20, and then by the time the draft processes and then being drafted in more like 21, 22. So, but yeah, you've got to get over there a lot earlier. And that's what I'm interested to see as well, because the way the contracts are different, because we don't have college here with the NRL, well, really with most sports, it doesn't really work on the college system the same way. So you can sign a pro contract at 16, 17, and then you play in their development teams, and then you automatically then for your first two, what will be your professional years, probably when you're 19, 20, or might even be 20 to 22, you're then contracted to that team. So what you might start finding is that when there's these gun players that start signing these professional contracts, then there's college football programs that look at signing them. But, I mean, there's a very hot sort of, in terms of his performances at the moment, young rugby union, rugby league player, and he's 17 right now, and his name escapes me at the moment, but the rugby union and rugby league in Australia are fighting over him, and literally at 17, 18, where he's looking at, an over $1 million contract Aussie, so over 800 grand, US, just to play developmental football. I mean, it's nuts. So the idea of them going over and playing college ball is an interesting one, because obviously you don't get paid in the college arena.
You know what, Matty, just to end on this, it's a good topic, though, with the NRL and crossover and rugby to the NFL. I think a good spot for some of these young blokes would be, because they're so athletic, would be the tight end, actually. The tight end would be it's not full, you can do a bit of blocking, you can do a bit of scheme, you can do a bit of stuff like that, and you do a bit of catching as well. There's not so much pressure to be that number one receiver, if you had a good, a third depth or second depth who was someone like Schuster, but maybe a bit bigger, someone like Ebron as well, from the NRL, you could make a transition like that, and it would be. You go.
No, I was going to say, without a doubt there, though, like tight end, you hit it, like literally hit it. I think maybe we talked about this before and we were both in agreement, but like tight end is one of those positions. I mean, guys, if anyone, don't do it right now because we want you to stay on Steelers touchdown under, but you can look up a guy called Tommy Turbo or Tom Trbojevic, and he's the best player on the team, Mark and I go for, and he's one of the best players in the league at it. He's 6'4", almost 6'5", and he's about, I'm going to say, 210 pound-ish off the top of my head. Very, very quick. I mean, he could easily play wide receiver. He can catch anything. So you look at some highlights from him. He's someone that could crack it big time. But anyway, let's move back on to Steelers football.
Yeah, it almost turned into a Manly Seagull podcast show.
That's it. But look, yeah, let's move on. So Dwayne Haskins is the other big news. Mark, everyone's going to have a different opinion on this.
Mate,
you go, then I'll go.
Look, I'm telling you right now, straight up, good on him. Good on him for getting out of there. Good on him for having a second shot. It's only a futures contract. It's not a 5-year, $10 million, $15 million a year deal. It's basically he's stuffed up there, and we're going to give the bloke a chance. That's it. That's he's going to be. He could be third. He could be fourth, but at least to give him a chance. He might not even be there in 2 years or next year. Look, I think we're a better organization than the football team. We have a name, they don't. That says something. The big boss over there has been doing silly buggers for certain years and stuff like that. But why not? He was a 15th overall pick. Was it 2 years ago in the draft? So he's still a number one round pick, and we got him on a futures contract. You look up some highlights with the Ohio State. He's got a cannon of an arm. Like that arm can go 60 yards plus. It is huge. So, I don't think we brought him in to say he's going to be the future Hall of Fame quarterback like Big Ben is, or it's complete different styles. But why not? This is what we as because we're all analysts, and we're all have our opinions on BTSC, so we have to talk about it. But just give the guy a shot. It's still and have a full off season, and he'll be sweet. I reckon. What do you reckon?
So, see, Mark, you're in the pro camp.
Oh yeah.
I'm in the pro camp because, as Dave very astutely pointed out, and by Dave I mean Dave Schofield, the idea that we can put different tenders on him after a year as well. I think that's really, really key for me. And what can you get for him? Equally, I like that he signed a futures contract. We're not obligated to do anything. Look, I'd like him to turn out well. These off-field issues, I mean, I back Ron Rivera, regardless of his win records and stuff. He's a no-nonsense coach. Tomlin's obviously got some experience dealing with characters when we look at, Le'Veon Bell, when we look at Antonio Brown and what have you. So if anyone's going to turn it around, I would hope it's Tomlin. But I'm a little bit conscious that there's a lot of issues the Steelers, or there's too many questions the Steelers have got to answer, over the next offseason and the next season that we need to focus on. So as long as it's not a distraction from that, all for it. Let's see what we can do. And obviously what it does show when you look at Haskins' mobility and you look at his cannon for an arm, Josh Dobbs is definitely not being re-signed, which is a good thing. He's been we're traded to Jacksonville, cut from them back to us. I think he's definitely potentially got a career in coaching, but he's not going to be an answer for the Steelers at backup. So yeah, Haskins is an option. But in the back of my mind, I'm sort of sitting there going, I don't even necessarily think he makes the roster, to be honest. I don't trust his what's going off the field.
Haskins won't make the roster.
No, I think there's something that'll happen. Something will happen.
That's fair enough too.
Well, and the other thing too is, whilst COVID might be hopefully it's a different situation in the US than what it is right now, come, the start of the season, the Steelers are one of the teams that did the best in the league from managing from a COVID perspective. A lot of his off-field issues this season had to do with just not adhering to the COVID protocol. So if you're not going to get the basics right with that, off the field, let alone learning a playbook, let alone fitting in, let alone being a good locker room influence and what have you, I just don't necessarily see it happen. But also there were some coaching updates. So last week we came to you live, and very much the news was Matt Canada's defensive coordinator, and we cautioned everyone and said, hang on, guys, like pull back a little bit in terms of they've got to go through the minority candidates, they've got to go through other protocols as well. Well, we're sitting here a week later, and Matt Canada's yet to be named defensive coordinator. So, yeah, what are you thinking there, Mark? It's been a week. We don't have an offensive coordinator yet.
Look,
is it an issue for you yet, or what are you thinking?
No, this is the one thing I think about the offensive coordinators, and I couldn't give a razoo who really calls the plays, as long as they're moving the ball forward and they're getting the first downs and the team is playing as a unit. That's where I stand. Like, I did have a big problem with Finkler because you could blatantly see there was something wrong. If I'm sitting in my lounge room, upside down, watching the football game, and there's like I can call plays that anyone can call, that's a big problem, I think, and I don't think he was suited for the job. Now, for the new guy coming in, well, let's just see what it is, mate. Hopefully, it is Canada, so he's been part of the system, and he can, what better way to get a promotion than to give it to Canada? And we've done that with the Steelers. So, like the one big answer for a lot of these questions and for the title of our show is like basically there's just still a lot of time. So we will have a lot of questions, but with Haskins or the offensive coordinator, there's so much time in between. Fun to talk about, but we know what the Steelers are going to do. They're going to get things together, and by draft time, we should have hopefully things set in place, and then we can start to look into a new year. Really. Well,
the other coaching thing for me this week, without Canada yet being in there, I loved the idea of them bringing in Pep Hamilton as well, bringing Pep Hamilton from the Chargers. And, for all the BTSC regulars and, those that are often on the audio side, and for anyone obviously that listened to the preview yesterday as well, the Steelers, Jeff was very much talking about the Steelers moving up and drafting a quarterback in round one. In my opinion, if we're going to do that, and obviously we're not going to get Trevor Lawrence, and I don't necessarily know how he'd necessarily fit with the Steelers, but if you can get a Trey Lance, that's fantastic. Awesome if you can trade up and get him. We can talk a little bit about that later. But the idea of bringing in the quarterback coach that helped adjust Justin Herbert into the NFL, that would be massive. That would be absolutely massive, and it shows long term. I don't necessarily think either it shows anything against Canada, but at least they're doing their due diligence. I mean, that's the thing about the Steelers. We've all been very quick to criticize the way they're promoted internally. I know that's been a discussion across different BTSC shows as well, but I think it's really good for us as fans. As we said, a little bit last week, you've got to have confidence in the fact that the Steelers organization is going, we know it's not good enough. We know we need to do better. And going through due diligence now, before the season's even over, it's over for us, but it's not over for the other teams yet. This is the right thing to do. This is the absolute right thing to do. So that was really positive for me in sort of them seeing that. I think the O-line coach is interesting in terms of, also not the biggest on, O-line play and what have you. I think in terms of, knowing the nitty-gritties of it, I think determining whether they're going to get the O-line coach before they get the defensive coordinator coach, I think it's really interesting to see how they go about that. But yeah, I mean, there's rumors. I mean, Doug Marrone, I think it'd be too much money, but if you brought someone like that, another experienced head into the room, I mean, that would be incredible for the Steelers.
Was there a stat out there or an idea out there that, I don't know where I heard this, that we had the least amount of coaches in the NFL this year, and we had about 17?
Yeah, so it was
right?
Yeah, and it's interesting in the US as well, because, and I almost wrote an article about this just before the season on BTSC, behindthesteelcurtain.com. So that's actually one thing we should bring up. For some people that are jumping into the YouTube or listening to this on audio podcast, obviously this is a BTSC podcast, but that's from Behind the Steel Curtain, which is part of SB Nation. So that's behindthesteelcurtain.com, which is your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. You will get news there faster than anywhere else. I promise you. If I've got a notification on my phone from ESPN, NFL.com, any of the other big sports news sites, CBS, whatever it is, I can go on and look at BTSC, and the article would have been written half an hour ago. well before then I got the notification. So that's your one-stop shop. But going back to what we're talking about, I almost wrote an article about this because it's interesting. In Australia, in the NRL, there's actually a cap now on what you can spend on training and coaches and development, which is a really interesting thing because in that field where you've got a cap but you don't have a draft, developing players or getting players in and then developing them is a really big part of it. I think that would be really interesting to see because you could have 17 coaches and you could have 12 coaches. But if your 12 coaches are all on a lot more money or ex-head coaches, whatever, obviously there's more that they might be able to bring to the table. I mean, yes, they've still got to coach a large amount of players. But I think when we look at things like training facilities and what have you, it'd be very interesting to understand what the average NFL team's actually investing into development. Because, I mean, if you can bring a player in on the cheap, and you see the way the Patriots have done this, you can bring a player in on the cheap and develop them, then that doesn't affect your cap as much. Then you've got room to go out and get the elite players or to pay players and keep them on and invest in them long term. So it's a really interesting discussion in terms of how this moves forward. But, I mean, we've seen that with the Steelers anyway, that they've always been thin in certain different positions in terms of coaches.
You almost kind of think, like, what do these coaches do? Because I still remember, like, I've been trying to teach my dad the game for the past, 20 years, and he just doesn't really understand it. And he's always made a comment like, why are there so many coaches on the sideline? Because in the NRL, we have, I think, about 3 or 4. We have a head coach, maybe assistant, and we have like a strength guy. Maybe we have a few runners who would, run out the water bottles and give out cheap hints, stuff like that. But in the NFL, you have 20 plus coaches. Like you have receivers, O-line, like every position has a coach. And then it's always been a funny thing, like, from our standpoint in Australia, what do these guys do? Like, there's so many people on the sidelines, and then you have another 55 to 60 people. Like, it's just a massive, massive organization that these things, and that's what I'm saying. Like, we've got to try and correct these things and get the culture right because it all starts from the top down to Juju. So, yeah, it's very interesting when we are comparing NRL and the NFL because obviously there's a lot of money involved too. But I like how, from the NFL standpoint, where they scout them from high school and they go on to college, and then the college offensive coordinator goes to this place, and you got the Alabama coach goes here, and it's just like they're all kind of like intertwined with each other, and they all understand that there's a massive, massive organization.
Well, Double HH wants to send Kevin Colbert to Albania, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. I think he wants to get some wrestlers, if I'm seeing the live chat. So that's one that's a large scouting mission there. What a classic. Big shout out to Ezra as well, who was sending the live chat. He's at a gig, but just wanted to say hey to all the Steeler Nation, say hey to some of the regulars, and give a like to the show. So that's good. So just give a little bit of a call out there. Now, Mark, I'm gonna throw an audible. Before we wrap up part 1 of this show, I thought we'd get into slinging the slang. Which for those of you that are new to the show, whether it's live now, whether you're viewing it live now on YouTube or whether you're listening to the podcast, slinging the slang is just like Ben likes to sling the rock. We like to sling the slang. So this is where we teach you a little bit of Aussie slang. Mark, what's your Aussie slang for this week?
Oh, I had a few, but I'm just going to go to the one that I wrote down, the number one on top of my head here. And it's very hard for me to pronounce this name, so I'll try my best. And I think we pronounce it differently in Australia anyway. Aluminium. Have you heard of that
Aluminum?
device?
Do you mean aluminum?
Yeah. Aluminum. Well, here's the debate, right? Aluminium or aluminum. Either way you say it. But in Australia, because it is so bloody hot and we can't be bothered arguing about how you say it, we just call it alfoil. So, like Big Al, like our offensive line, we call it AL and then FOIL, alfoil. That's how generic, Eric, we are down here. What's yours?
Mine was it was solidified by Vance actually retiring. Mine was tall timber. And I think you've actually said this before on a podcast when you were just asking me a question. But I just sort of thought, so in a lot of different Aussie sports, when there's a really tall player, so it might be a power forward in basketball for the Boomers, or it's a second rower in rugby union, or it's a one of the forwards in rugby league. It might be a ruckman in Aussie rules football if you watch Aussie rules football. they're all generally referred to, say, kind of 6'3" and up. You got to be a tall timber, and it's big for me this week because we've had so many questions about the O-line and their tall timber, and they've got Vance retiring, and I think he's 6'5", so he's tall timber, and it's one that I like to use a bit as well. So I thought I'd throw it out there, and then that way when I use it in future, everyone will know what I'm talking about.
So some of those blokes are just huge, aren't they? I actually went through the NFL.com, like the stats and like their height and stuff and their weight. There's some big fellas. They're like 6'7". They're huge. They're like built to play tight end or offensive line. I would like, it'd be so cool to like, I'm about 6'1" or 2 or 6'1", but to be like beside Al, who's 6'7" and like 300 million pounds, like it'd be just so like fun to be next to him.
Al's
like,
a big bloke. He's a big bloke.
You'd just be blown away, wouldn't you? You'd just be like, whoa.
Like, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's nuts. You do get some second rowers in rugby union that are a bit that height. But anyway, back to Steelers. But look, that wraps up part 1 of this week's show, Steelers Touchdown Under. For all of these live on YouTube, just hold on 1 second. We'll be right back with part 2. For everyone on the audio side, jump over to part 2 where we'll talk everything AFC North AFC, not AFC North, but AFC Championship games, NFC Championship games, bold predictions, bit of Q&A, and answering a few more of these too many questions for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we're back on Steelers Touch Down Under. I'm Matt Peverell, and I'm joined by my co-host Mark Davison as we come to you live from the future on Sunday morning. It's 9:35-ish a.m. You know, it's just after 5 on the, or it's 5:30 on the eastern seaboard of America. Mark, big question to kick off part 2. What did you have for brekkie?
Oh, me? Just like toast, man. Just had a bit of toast and a bit of butter. You know, something easy.
Just butter toast, nothing on it.
Well, I got to get ready for the show, mate. I woke up at 8 o'clock, so I just woke up, had a coffee, had a bit of toast. But I normally would make bacon, eggs, and stuff like that. Like, why did you ask me that question? What's going on?
I don't know. I've seen people talking in the live chat about like with their beers and stuff. So I had a coffee and toast with blackberry jam and all that sort of stuff. So that was good. But I don't know. Just thought we'd crack it out with that one.
That's heaps good.
That's hilarious. Oh, good. Thaddeus. I'll just bring out Thaddeus while we're there. Can we learn some new Aussie slang? So we just went through some Aussie slang, but if anyone in the live chat's got a question for us about a word they might have heard or whatever, we're more than happy to answer one of those.
Also, put in day-to-day life stuff, like what do you call a car, or what do you call like a seat, or what do you call how do you turn the TV on? I've got one for that. One of my mates down here in Australia, he calls when you turn the TV on, he just calls them buttons. He says pass me the buttons. And we look around going, what are you talking about? What do you mean? The controller. Oh, right. So we call that, you might call it a TV remote, but we call it a controller, the buttons, the flicker. We call it 1,000 things here, and we just kind of know what it means. Yeah.
No, the funniest one, so I was in Vegas when I was about 11. My mum worked in the poker machine industry at the time, and we went over there for a couple of weeks anyway. So one of the days she was in business meetings, we were taken around by a nanny or a babysitter or whatever for the day, and this lady comes up to me and she says, I'm not going to do the accent because it's not that good, but the funny thing she said was, when's the trolley coming? Now, for Mark and I, a trolley is like a shopping cart. So I was 11 years old, and I'm looking at her, and I gave her a very weird look. And she's like, like the trolley, like what time's it coming? And stops here. And in my mind, I'm thinking there's these shopping carts like coming down in this big line. And I was just like, what does that even mean? Anyway, so I gave her a blank face. Anyway, she sort of stormed off and figured I was being rude because I was just in shock. I didn't really know what she meant by trolley. And I remember the babysitter that we had, nanny, looked at us, and she said to me, what did you think she meant by trolley? And so I basically explained that a trolley was like a shopping cart. And so then we all had a great big laugh about it. But I'll never forget that one. That was great.
I think there's a million of them. One just came to mind then. If I have a quick little story, like when we go to the shops down here, we go to the shopping center and stuff like that. Where I live on the Central Coast, we dead set call one of our shopping centers a suburb or a postcode. So no one calls it what it actually is. So our postcode or suburb of like place of area is called Tuggerah. And now what we do is with our shopping center, we just say, you going to Tuggerah?
Yeah.
That's
a Tugger at Westfield. It's a Tugger at Westfield,
yeah, but no one calls it Westfield. No one. So we just say, oh, I'm just going to Tugger to get some lunch. And that means the other person has to know that you're going to the shops and not going to the actual area. So I don't know if you do it where you're from, up down in Sydney and stuff like that. But we have tons of those things. I've got in one with my local when I used to live another place about 10 minutes from here. We would still call the same thing the old shop from like 10 years ago. And even though it's changed names like 3 or 4 times now. Like we're stuck in our ways down here.
A couple more, but Mark, can you translate this?
Maybe you could mates could translate struth. Can't say that the next word. No. And the next word either. I don't want to bring those 2 words up, Ty. They're probably not YouTube sensitive. But struth, this
depending
means,
on how you interpret them as well.
And that's a lot with our language in Australia. You could say, like, I still want to try and have a show one day, Matty, but I think we need to meet in person first, where we just talking mates. Because when you say the word mate, like mate, they can all mean different things. So
that's it. That's a lot of our slang. Is.
Yeah.
But no, to answer Rhino Tool, I can't. I'm not sure if Mike can. It's a bit of the thing about that as well is it's very culturally sensitive. So just like, it's, I guess over in the US, if you're the whole Native American Indian, if you're not Native American Indian, wearing that headdress and the concerns around that, it's a similar sort of discussion locally. So yeah, that's for the Indigenous and Aboriginal people of Australia, and their descendants, less so much, for us that, I don't know, Mike, I've never asked you. I don't think you're Indigenous, but
no, I tried it back when I was in high school, before, but no, it's really hard. You've really got to like, blow your lips like raspberries, and it's very hard technique to use. We just had one here from Kegels Bagels, which this is a really good question because I think it's good to understand. Oh, it just went away, but it said, where do you guys watch games in a normal year? Are there bands? Are there bars and fans to go watch? Where do you watch your games, Matty?
Yeah, so this is a really great question. Great to have you, Kegels Bagels. So you might be a bit of new to our show because we talk about this from time to time, but it's always a good one to answer. So it depends on what it is. So often the Thursday night games, they come on a Friday lunchtime. So, I mean, in Australia, sometimes the culture is there'll be some weeks in your workplace that you go have what they call a pub lunch, and it'll be a couple of hours long lunch. So often you can go watch it there. Fridays are the sort of one where I'm more inclined to take the day off work, where I can if it's a big game, just purely so I can enjoy all that experience. And yeah, you'd go to like a bar or a pub and go watch that game. But when they're on the hardest ones are the Sunday afternoons, Monday and Monday nights. So Sunday afternoon's not too bad because I can watch it before I go to work. But the late Sunday games, which the Steelers had a few of, are killers because I've got to have a watch in the background at work or catch up that evening. So a bit of a challenge for me from that perspective. That's why, like, for instance, even the divisional round, when the Steelers were going to play the Browns, not divisional round, wildcard round, when the Steelers were going to play the Browns, I was secretly hoping for a Saturday game so I could sit at home and watch it on a Sunday and have that feeling that you guys get every Sunday afternoon. But how about you, Mark?
Well, like I watch mine here at home, or I might go to the pub to try and convince them to put the TV on. But basically, like, my first very game, I'm pretty sure that I watched at nighttime was in Pittsburgh. So a lot of times, like you just said, like we watch our games at 3 a.m., 6 a.m. and then 10, and then as the year progresses forward, it goes up an hour because of daylight savings. Now, the very first game I watched was at nighttime was in Pittsburgh in Super Bowl, I believe 49, and I think it was Seahawks versus Patriots with that catch that they should have ran the ball in, and that was like the atmosphere there was like, well, I was already in Pittsburgh. It was daytime going to night, but that was really the first time that I had seen football live on a TV screen, and I could appreciate and be around a bar at nighttime. And for us down here, it's so strange because like I enjoy watching football by myself anyway, but like we wake up for your 1 p.m. games, we wake up at 3 a.m. and then I just go back to sleep after that. So it's that's why it's always like fun for Australians like myself and Matty to go over, because when we go over there, we appreciate it so much. Like I must have been to that Jerome Bettis bar like 3 times. I went down to the south side, I think 3 or 4 times. I'm hoping if I go over there next time, I want to explore a bit more around, like, is it Monroeville? I don't know what some of these other suburbs are, but there are a few other suburbs around there. Like maybe get a car and drive around, because I have walked that city a fair bit. But yeah, it's just a different experience for us in Australia, for sure.
Look, just before we get into having a look at the AFC Championship game and the NFC Championship game, wanted to bring up Snowman's question. Mark, who's your all-time favorite Steelers player?
My all-time, I got to say, this is a bit of a controversial one, but I actually had 2 answers here, and I'm going to give someone a shout out in a minute. Actually, he's from Australia. I like James Harrison. James Harrison has been my guy since
Really?
Just the way he played football. I know some of his tackles weren't meant to be, they weren't legal, but the way he played that game, and one of those Monday Night Football games where the announcer said, just, send him straight to the Pro Bowl. He had three sacks, a forced fumble. He had a pick. He had everything. He was just like that Steeler player. And I just like his mentality and how he played the game. Yeah, he went to the Bengals. Yeah, he went to the Patriots, but he's always been one of my favorites. But can I quickly just get a quick shout out to my mate Elijah here? And he is also from Australia too. So Elijah Pritchard, if you guys can welcome him in the chat, and I'm sure you will. He's a massive fan of Troy Polamalu. And I think a lot of people are like down here in Australia. Elijah's actually, he's part of our group, Steelers Nation Australia. He's always having, great comments and stuff like that. So shout out to you, mate. Hopefully in the future I can, meet up with you for a beer as well. But yeah, Troy would be on the other side, like not looking back to the 70s, which I don't know too much about, or haven't seen them play, but people I had seen play. Troy's up there. Like how like Troy is once in a million player.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, Joe Green from that era, without a doubt, when you talk about that 70s era. When you talk about Hines Ward as well, I think he epitomized what it is to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, and, hard on offense, did all the flashy stuff he needed to do, but he was hard and he was gritty. Troy, the same thing. I mean, it's hard when you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and you've won 6 Super Bowls and there's all these Hall of Famers. How can you not like some of these blokes? I mean, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So, yeah. But look, let's move on. It's AFC Championship game this week, NFC Championship game. Let's start with the NFC side and crack through that. Mark, Buccaneers, Packers. Who's going to the Super Bowl?
Well, this is part of my prediction too, but I think Bucks are. I think there's a narrative for Brady. I think he'll get there again. Although I'll be very honest, I saw a few Bucks games this year. I didn't see much of the Green Bay. I didn't see any Green Bay on TV. They kind of I just thought, what were they, 12-4 or 13-3? They just kept winning, and no one really. Well, for me, I didn't really talk about them or hear about them much at all. So it's Rodgers versus Brady, which is like kind of a snooze fest because they're getting up there and a bit older. Let's be real. Like we've seen that a lot. Like I'm more looking forward to the Bills versus Chiefs than the Bucks and Green Bay. But I would like to see. I don't know. I think maybe like Mike Evans and stuff like that, and AB, he'll probably get a chance to rip it up.
Isn't he out? I thought he was. Is he out? I heard reports that he might be out.
Who? Mike Evans?
Nah, Brown. I thought Brown might be out, but I might be wrong there.
Don't know. It could be in a Raiders jersey again.
Mate, he could be going back to the Patriots.
Oh yeah, I don't know, but like that's it. This is like I always find these games are some of the funnest games to watch though, because they play really hard to get to the Super Bowl, and the NFC and the AFC championships are just some of the best football to watch. So hopefully there's a good showing for the Bucks versus Green Bay, but I've got Bucks in that one. As much as I hate to say it, I think Brady's going back. Who do you reckon in that one?
I can't go past the Green Bay Packers. I mean, what they've done, the way they finished up the season as well, on those last weeks where they scored it was 4 touchdowns, in the snow, or Brady, threw 4 touchdowns in the snow. That's nuts. So for me, it's definitely going to be the Packers. Aaron Rodgers is playing lights out football. He wants that other Super Bowl. He wants to solidify his Hall of Fame credentials there. No way. Yeah, the Bucks aren't beating the Packers this week. No way. I just think it's hard as well. Like Brady's used to playing in the snow, but when you've got a team that's coming from Tampa that's got to go up there to Lambeau Field, I just think that's such a challenge. I think the way the Packers can run the ball if they get up with a lead, the guys they've got on defense as well, I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on Brady. So, yeah, for me, it's the Packers there, especially if they get a lead.
Is it not a Brady game, though? As much as we all despise Brady and, Brady is one of the best and probably could be the best because he has won 6 Super Bowls. He's been to about 10 of them. And I always say, like I love my Steelers, but being honest with Brady, some players can't even win 6 games and he's won 6 Super Bowls. So is this not a Brady game where he's like, the world's still against me, blah, blah, blah. I want another ring on my finger. I could see him really having a game, at least keeping up with Rodgers. Like, I don't think he's going to get stonewalled and kicked out. I don't really overly care for that one as much. With the AFC one, I'm looking for like Bills versus Chiefs.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but my opinion is I don't want to see the Chiefs in it again. I like to see a new matchup. I want to see the Bills in it. Like, as much as the Bills are crazy fans and all that, but there was a period in the 90s, was it? The 90s, yeah, when they lost like 4 in a row. And if you ever watch that documentary, you're like, you get 4 in a row. You think we had it bad? They had 4 in a row, and they didn't win one of them.
So here's my one. That's a little bit fun. Mine is if it's Packers, I want the Bills playing the Packers because that is going to be an awesome game. That's going to have what everyone wants. Yeah. That's going to have some flashy plays. It's going to have some great defense. It's going to be awesome, right? Like, that's turn the TV as loud as it can go. Watch the hits. You're going to feel like you're there. If it's the Bucs, though, I do not want Brady getting another. I don't want Brady having more Super Bowl wins than the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if it's Brady, I want Kansas City Chiefs because I don't think Brady will win in a shootout against Pat Mahomes. I just don't see that happening. Also, I kind of like to see Brady having to throw, with all his old age, having to throw it in to a bunch of other guys wearing red and being confused with the color scheme.
Well, I think Brady, I think it will be. Well, here's my prediction now. I'm going to throw it now. My prediction of the week is it's Bucs versus Bills in the Super Bowl, and I think I think this is what I'm getting at. This is my little narrative. Will go ahead. I think that the Bills will then overcome the Bucs and beat Brady because they won the AFC East for the first time in 100 years. They won that, and now they're versing Brady. Like, imagine seeing Brady again, not as a Patriot, but as a Buck, and you have to beat him in the Super Bowl in his stadium. If you can't get motivated for that, and you're on the defense, and you've got Edmonds there and some other blokes there, and you've got Josh Allen, who's I think he's a pretty good quarterback, and Stephon Diggs, I wish we had that. Stephon Diggs, his route ability is just insane. What he can do.
Yeah.
So I would love to see Bills Bucs, and then the Bills beat the Bucs. But I understand what you're saying. If it's Bills versus Chiefs, that'd be a pretty exciting matchup. Oh no, sorry, who'd you say? Bills versus
Bills and Packers. I think if you got Bills Packers, that's going to be
two hard hitting franchises because you think the Bucs as well are kind of like a similar team down here when they have Brady. They're like Melbourne. They kind of Melbourne for the NRL. They kind of
Do you know what the game?
It's not going to be exciting football if the Bucs are in.
You know what that game will remind me of? It'll remind me of 2009 when the Saints played the Colts in that Super Bowl, where it was really good defensive players. You had Vilmer and you had Dwight Freeney and you had these 2 really good quarterbacks and but obviously you had the Saints there with Drew Brees when he was a lot younger, and you've got Drew Brees against Peyton Manning, the old guy, and you see that but he could still throw the ball then. That was before his Denver Broncos times. That's the same thing now where it's you'll have Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen. I just think there's some really cool storylines. So, I think for ratings wise, I'd much prefer to see the Bills Packers there. But, fine. If Brady wants to have a crack and get his arm, torn off by throwing it too much compared to Pat Mahomes, let's go down that route. We'll have fun. All the same.
Either way it goes, it's going to be really interesting football. I just hope that with the Super Bowl, we do see some really, really good football. Like I said last week or the show before, that Patriots versus Rams was absolutely terrible. The offense was awful. So I think if the Bucs do get in, they might play a bit safer. But like you said, if the Packers in versus Bills, those two teams are gonna hammer it out, play good defense. They've got good running games on both. They both can throw the rock. They're gonna, they're gonna test the waters on either side and not play safe. Whereas that Super Bowl we saw a few years ago, they just played safe.
Yeah, true. So, Mark, what's that bold prediction then? What's that bold prediction? Our punt of the week, as we always like to say.
Yeah.
A punt might be a kick, but a punt also means a bit of a gamble down under. What's that punt of the week then that you're making for this week?
Well, last week I said the Browns are going to win Super Bowl, and I got it wrong. So
well done. Good. Well done. You've got people all the time. Well done. I didn't want to say
yeah. So definitely got that wrong. But mine's going to be this week. I want to keep mine current, unlike yours. Like yours feel like a tax return. Don't get it back until the next year with some of your predictions. They're crazy. But I think it's going to be Bills versus Bucks. I really want, out of all the teams left, this is crazy to say, but I think I want the Bills to win. They haven't won one. Let them win this one, and then they can be sleepy for the next 30 years.
So you're saying the Bills will do what Kansas City did and then is win one after not winning one. Well, I think the Bills haven't won one at all, but like obviously Kansas had, was it like 50-something years or something?
50 years.
Yeah, it's nuts. But you know anything about that franchise, just talking about that, like the role that they played in fusing, what we now know as the AFC and the NFC and what have you with the, that history there, and where the Steelers fitted in with the mix and stuff as well. But yeah, awesome. Okay, so you want the Bills to win it all?
Out of all the teams, I don't want to see the Bucks win it because of Brady. I don't want to see Green Bay win it because they've won a few. And I don't want to see the Chiefs win it again because they won last year. And I think if the Chiefs win it, we got a pretty big problem on our hands because back-to-back Super Bowls is hard to do. And then that's going to be very tough for the Steelers in future years and the next period when we had Brady in our way for so long. And we can maybe talk about next week because I actually had been to the Super Bowl with 50 and 51. Yeah. And with 51, Pittsburgh almost got there, and then Brady 30-something to whatever. And, yeah, he was always in our way. So Mahomes now might be in our way. And that's the reality of it. Oh, actually, we might be in our own way. when you really think about it, what we've been doing. But yeah, Bill, I don't know. I was in Buffalo last year, and I remember talking to one of the blokes who did Uber, and he told me like, yeah, Bills have got a good team, and they're going to have a chance. And I went, no, I can see that. I see what you're saying. And now we do see it. They're a team that we wanted to be. Like great culture at the moment. Everyone fired up. Number one receiver, good running game, mobile quarterback. That's still a threat for things to happen.
Yeah, well, look, so you've got up me now. So now I can't do a long-term punt of the week. So that's great. My punt of the week is that when we go live to air next week, the Steelers still won't have an offensive coordinator announced.
Yeah, right. Okay. When do they normally announce them anyway? I woke up, with the Vance thing yesterday and went, oh, geez, like he retired. I'm on tenterhooks now to see if Ben's going to like retire.
That's what I find. See, this is what I find very interesting, right? This is what I found very interesting this week. They're very key on getting an O-lineman coach in because they want to get, and obviously when we had Munchak, he was the run game coordinator. You then have discussion now about the Steelers trading up, which is going to be a challenge because the Colts are going to have to trade up as well. And the Colts are 3 picks ahead of the Steelers. So they've got a bit more weight behind them in terms of who they can trade up for, right? Because they really need a quarterback now that you've got Rivers retiring this week. So that was big news, which we didn't cover at the start. But that does have an implication on more than just Ben being the last quarterback from that 2004 draft. So I think when you've seen that conversation start to talk about quarterback, you've seen them bring in Haskins. Now we know they've taken an opportunity that Haskins' last ditch avenue of playing in the NFL. The fact that they're doing some different things, the fact that they're talking about a QB coach becoming in as defense coordinator, and then would they keep Canada if he's not going to go elsewhere? I'm getting very interested now to see what they can do to keep Big Ben. But equally, if the cap is going to be $180 million, as now they're sort of saying it's probably going to be more around that mark, and now Vance is off. It was put up by someone in the live chat a bit earlier. They're quite right. There's suddenly potentially $10 million more in the Steelers' salary cap. So if we are keeping Big Ben, it's a little bit easier to digest. But you want to go into that cap stuff, you can join me now in my weekly audio show, which is Steelers Cap Room, as we go through that. And both for that show and for this show, if you've got a question that you think of during the week, or you're listening to us on the audio side and you miss the live show, feel free to email Aussie, that's AUSSIE, Steeler91@gmail.com, and we'll tackle some of those questions for you in the following show. So if you've got any feedback, or you've got questions, or there's a topic you want us to bring up, both in Steelers Touchdown Under or that Cap Room show that I'm doing as well, which comes to you on Wednesdays, feel free to send us an email, and we'll look to address that. So definitely one there for everyone. Well, look, Mark, before we wrap up the show, I thought we'd go into a bit of, as the title says, 2 weeks left. We've covered what's happening this week, in week 1 of those 2 weeks. We've covered some of the questions that have started to sort of crop up for the Steelers in at least this last week, or since the offseason started. But I know you had a couple of questions for me as well this week, and we'd love to take any questions from the live chat as well. But Mark, you want to kick it off with one of those questions that you had for me? I know that you had a keen one for me.
Mine really is to do with what you were saying about the offensive coordinator. But I just think, do you think whoever we get, do we need to be more run savvy? Do we need to be more are we gonna draft a running back, and how can we be 32nd in the league? So mine's basically around how is this running game going to change, and how do we bring in a guy that can mix it up? And Big Ben can't be throwing the ball 60 plus anymore. So what do you think about, do we have to hire a guy who is running back mentality, or do we need to change something there? What are your thoughts on that?
So it's like what we talked about last week, and I gave that example, which I remember as I did the circle, and as I was listening to the podcast, I was thinking about myself in time, because I always go back and listen to our shows. Really important so that we can learn, because this is our rookie year, and we're going into year 2 next year. We're following Claypool onwards, so hopefully we can continue his trajectory onward and upward. I think the run, it's really interesting with the run game. There's a lot of things they need to do. They obviously need to draft a fairly high running back. But I don't want them to spend a first round pick on it. I think there's a lot of value in the second and the third, depending on who you want to go after. I like Javonte Williams out of North Carolina. I don't know if he's declared yet or not, but I'm going to go through that in the next week or so, look at everyone that's declared as they start to sort of happen, because I know there's a number of underclassmen that are now able to declare for the draft. But I think it really depends on, if Big Ben's going to come back, how you're going to make that work. It depends on what your O-line's looking at. So once we know whether Villanueva's coming back, whether we know whether Pouncey's coming back, I agree with Brian Anthony Davis. I think they'll bring back to Castro, even though I flagged that on this week's Cap Room, the cost of bringing back to Castro. So look, defensive coordinator will be really important. But I think as we've seen around the league, if you look at the 4 teams that are left this year, right? Aaron Rodgers leading Green Bay, Tom Brady leading the Bucks, Josh Allen even leading the Bills. You've got, and obviously Patrick Mahomes with the Kansas City Chiefs. These are very good offenses. And the Steelers have had a very good defense 2 years in a row. Now, they didn't rock up to play in the wildcard round against the Browns, and we lost the game. Fine. But what got us back into the game was, one, obviously the Browns easing off on defense to try and stop the long plays, but it was offense. And I think while it's fundamental that you've got good pass rush and that you've got defensive backs that don't let off massive players, it is still a situation whereby I think the league's going very offense heavy. So how you integrate that and how you integrate that run game into the pass game is going to be incredibly important. I think there's a lot. It's a very difficult question to answer right now, but having a QB-focused defensive coordinator, which is if they do hire Canada, or if they do go after Pep Hamilton, as we've talked about, that sort of shows you where they're going to lean. So I think this idea of going back to a 50-50 split is not something we're probably going to see from the Steelers, but we do need an effective run game. And there's a lot of, it's like our title of the show says, there's a lot of questions between now and the start of the 2021 season that need to be answered for us to really understand where that run game's going.
It just needs to be better than 32nd, I think. But
you can't be any worse.
Yeah. They might go to the CFL. I don't know. They
Start
might drop down there.
Yeah,
but
that's it.
I think you're correct. I think it all starts with running game, building that line up again, putting a hat on the hat, and getting those guys the mentality where we want to run the ball because we know we can pass it. We know we can do really good things, and what comes better off the pass in an effective running game. And we just didn't have that after 11 games or 12 games. Everything just went flat after the Ravens game, and like it has been a crazy season for that. So I think I'm not a big draft guy as well, but like I'd be happy to see O-line in there because I know what Dotson has done this year. He's played tremendous, and he's one of he's going to be a fan favorite for a long time. And get another bloke next to him and reorganize that line, get someone who can run the ball, and don't have to be like a running game like the Ravens, but we definitely need to get 100 yards a game or critical downs. We need something to happen, and we just didn't see that this year. And the defenses who are playing us must be thinking like, well, we've got this game. We understand what they're going to run, and we know they can't run the ball against us. So, and that's what the football has been built around throughout the period I've been watching. We are going to a more pass-happy league. That's fantastic and fun to watch, but it does come down to the trenches, and it's my O-line against your D-line, really.
100%. And it's who's going to monster the guy in front of them, who's going to stand up, who's more hungry, the rest of it. There's some great questions, so let's go rapid fire, Mark.
Yep.
Mark Tobin, do you think they'll find a way to re-sign Dupree? Yes or no?
I hope so, because I think there is – well, rapid fire, I hope so because you have him back next year with Watt again. You have another chance to get a Super Bowl. We do have Alex Highsmith, true. But, yeah, Dupree is playing really well and did play – and it just depends where he wants to go, really, and how much money. And you know more about than I do, but I hope so.
Yeah, for me, no, in the sense that I think he's going to command, even if it's not his cap number of 15 million, it'll be 12 million plus. And you know what? It'll probably be 18 million plus. No, that won't be happening. Let's bring up Steeler Chick 46 says, will Juju be back? I hope so. I think there's room to put a franchise tag on him and work it out. I think if the Steelers could find a way to have 12 million, I think off the top of my head, the franchise tag will be somewhere in that 16-ish million mark, give or take $1 million either side. I think they could work out a deal for Juju around 12 million. I think he knows that he's not a wide receiver number one on most teams. And even with the Steelers, he's sort of like a 1B, a 2A. I think he'd want to stay too. So let's see. But Mark, do you think Juju will be back?
I think the opposite. I think Juju might leave for the bigger ticket and get more money somewhere else and go to a new organization and try and be number one. And I think Bud has a better chance than signing than Juju. Just because Juju is building that brand and he wants to be the games and then all that kind of stuff, maybe his role and idea now is done in Pittsburgh. I'd still be happy if he was in Pittsburgh, but it would be a fresh start for both parties as well.
Yeah, look, I know we said rapid fire. That'll fit in my bold prediction then from last week, which is that Juju would sign somewhere else and be back with us in a couple of years. I think Juju means a lot more to this offense and this wide receiver unit than people realize, even if it's not about maturity. I think you will see Claypool and Deontay Johnson have some struggles at times without a Juju, and it's not about drafting another young wide receiver, or even if you bring in a veteran for the presence. There's a role he plays within this, and I don't know if the Steelers can afford to lose that, particularly if they go high and draft a good rookie quarterback, and marketability as well is massive.
Big question, would you be shocked? I wouldn't be shocked if he signed.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think they should look at the franchise tag route and then go, okay, well, how can we get you for 12 million, or this is the contract, or whatever. Lumberzak 94. Who do you guys want to see drafted first? Ooh, this is a big question, but Mark, what position? Anyone
on the O-line. I think we have to improve that running game. I don't care who it is, as long as he can push someone over. And I saw a few plays, was it from the Green Bay guys? I saw one guy the other week, or the game I was watching, he just pancaked a bloke, and it was awesome to see.
Yeah.
So anyone that can fit that, and we're getting pretty long on the tooth there with the O-line. So anyone I'd be happy to see. Years past, I wouldn't be happy. I want to see a receiver or a flashy guy. No, we've got to get some hard-hitting football going on into the next 5 years or so. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I don't want them to draft a running back. I don't care who it is. I don't want them to draft a running back in round one. O-line, if Big Ben's back, If you can't do something to trade up, if Ben's not, if you can't do something to trade up for a QB, there's some good defensive ends or edge rushers. There's also some really good defensive backs in this draft. The Steelers do need a cornerback. I don't care what anyone says. Hayden's a cap expense. He may not be back. And just if everyone's focused on all these other positions this year, why not go grab? I'm a big believer in best player available, and then you can figure out through free agency or other trades after that. So I'm just very interested to see who's left on the board if we're keeping to 21. But the Steelers will probably, I don't think they're going to trade up into even the top 12, but I do think they may trade up a couple of positions if there's that one key player. Donald Nolan says, if Dupree walks, does Highsmith start opposite Watt next year? For me, it's a yes. I don't know why. Maybe you might want to bring in a veteran to back him up a little bit, but and give him spells. But yeah, for me, he's played tremendously. Go for it.
Yeah, I reckon as well. Like, people are talking about bringing in the other Watt on the other side. Definitely bring back Highsmith. He play him, start him. He played really well near the end. He got injured in the last game, which hurt us. And actually, Dupree being hurt hurt our whole season. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's gonna be a fun bloke to watch too. Opposite Watt. So that's the thing too. Like, this is probably another show you could do. We're almost running out of time here. But Dupree comes back. What do you do with Highsmith? Like, do you just get rid of Dupree or let him walk and see what goes on, and let Highsmith start? You've got two guys there. One is a really great player. One could be turning into one. So,
but it's like what we said about. Yeah, but it's like what we said about developing players, though. They're not going to develop if they don't play. Like, you can draft a whole bunch of round one, if you had, let's say, 10 first-round draft picks, you can draft all those players. But if you don't give them an ability to play, what's the point? Like, it doesn't make – so that's the thing. Like, Highsmith's showing he can do it. I don't think he can play every defensive snap of every game. I'm not suggesting that for anything. But they drafted him for a reason, in the third round, and they've invested in him for a reason there. Steelers Nation 412 asked for a super early prediction on our schedule next year. Let us run through that on another show. We'd be more than happy. It was one that Mark and I had sort of thought about running through that schedule. So we'll give you the
way too early.
Way too early. But give us a couple of weeks and we'll have a crack.
I think we're above 500 at least, but it's very, very early. We're playing some tough teams next year. Very tough teams.
Question from Facebook, Mark Mazaros. I hope I've said that right. I'm not a fan of any QB making 40 million plus a season. 180 equals 90 million offense. That means Ben is 45% of that space. Those numbers are roughly correct there. I tend to agree. But again, that's one that we can look at in some of those future shows. And equally, at the end of the day, we'll sit here and say what we like, but if the Steelers are going to be loyal and bring back Big Ben if he wants to be back, there's an issue there. Hopefully they can do a restructure that stretches some of that money over future years, but he just plays out 2021 and that's it. Donald Nolan says 12-4 for super early predictions. Snowman says, do the Steelers draft a running back or offensive lineman? As we've said, I don't want them to draft a running back. Mark's open to an offensive lineman, as am I. As long as the right guy is there, I do not want to overdraft a player. This is the draft that we can't afford to overdraft a player. We can't afford an Artie Burns pick this draft. It's just not the one. Equally, and I'll bring this up. I did say this into one of the Slack channels of BTSC. I'm open to them if they don't like who's on the board. If there's not a proper player in terms of a first round grade that the Steelers have at a key need, like O-lineman, quarterback, and what have you, trade back. You know what? Turn that 24th round pick into 2 seconds or a second and an extra third. Trade back. The cap is tighter this year. You're better to get value at different positions for those people if you feel that there's no one left in a key need with a first round grade on them. That's something that we should all be a little bit open to as well, because at the end of the day, we've got a number of needs and we've got a number of position groups that we need to get younger at.
There was one last one. Do you want to do this? We might have to wrap up soon. There was one about the Haskins again, Matty.
Oh, yeah?
Let me bring it up. Thomas says here, if you want to explain, like, what's your overall opinion on Pittsburgh Steelers signing Haskins, because that is the big news of this week. What do you, we talked about a little bit. Well, maybe we can end on that.
Yeah, I've just got one more that actually after that I just want to address as well. So certainly, look, there's nothing to lose for the Steelers, but what I don't like about it is we've spent a lot of time bringing the right people in terms of character, and I don't think Dwayne Haskins ladders up to that. So as long as the Steelers get something positive out of it, whether it's someone trades for him, he sits there and he's a serviceable backup, whatever it is, great. But as soon as he starts becoming a distraction, see you later, mate.
Yeah, fair enough. And he's like I said before, he's only on the future contract, so it's like only 1 year. It's like a prove-it deal. It's basically saying, can you get your act in order? And then we'll start to talk other deals and see what happens. But we've got Big Ben this year, and if Rudolph behind him, I don't really see them bringing in another vet or anything like that. So yeah, why not? Well, just see how it goes with Haskins.
And then finally, end it with Boo Bash on the YouTube. What about Shannon's article, TJ for Deshaun? Shannon writes some awesome articles, and he and I have some great conversations in the BTSC Slack channel and debates at times as well. So, it's a really big shout out to him as well and his articles and all the articles on behindthesteelcurtain.com. I don't think you trade TJ for anyone. I mean, why are you going to, I wouldn't trade the league leader in sacks year after year. Or he was this year, but, he was quite high up there last year. He should be defensive player of the year this year. If he misses out, that's 2 times he should have got it. But, you're probably signing him on a 6-year deal or maybe 7-year deal for 130-ish. That's not that much on the salary cap. But if you think 7 years from now, we're talking 2027, 2028, the cap by then will be, roughly, let's go 4 years at 10 million because we'll probably go back to where it was last year at 200. So let's say it's 240 million. His cap number a year then becomes, let's say it's 25 million. That's only 10% of the cap. I don't know why you'd get rid of him. You need a hallmark on defense. You need someone that embodies that spirit. He's a leader. And also, if I'm Deshaun Watson, do I want to come to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I've got no running back. I've got very young wide receivers. I don't have a proven veteran to throw it to. My O-line is all over the place at the moment. They're either old or leaving. So how is that going to be much better than what I had at the Houston Texans, where I've got someone like Laramie Tunsil, protecting me? And there's offensive coordinators are all over the place. They're all developmental guys. I've developed my game. I just don't, if I'm Deshaun Watson, I don't know why I want to go to the Steelers right now. I just don't see that.
You definitely don't get rid of TJ. I'm sorry, no. Shannon. I didn't read your article. I read a few of them, but I think TJ is the pinnacle point of that defense, and he will be for the next 5-6 years. He's only going to get better, and then when he gets better, players get better around him. So we need to keep TJ Watt. That would be a really crazy move, like they did with Houston with Hopkins, and they sent him to the Cardinals, and he had a brilliant year. You just don't. I don't think you do that. That's a. I don't know. I think you keep TJ overall. You have to.
And then the other thing too to it is that, as Shannon, I've only started that article in terms of getting read through it, but I dare say what you're also seeing from Shannon there is he's talking about the fact that for us to get to Deshaun Watson, that is the cost of getting Deshaun Watson in trading a player like TJ Watt. What that means, it's just too high a cost. But look, that's it for this week's Steelers Touchdown Under. It's been a fast show. We've gone a little bit over. It's felt really fast.
It's been a hot show.
Oh, mate, I'm absolutely dripping. I'm, as I said, off to Paul Barbecue Beach. Got the Steelers mug full of cold water. But from Mark and I, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Go Steelers.
Go Steelers.